Welcome to the Dad Show podcast. Today we have Mr. Frog.
What's up?
Good job, baby. Hey, guys. It's Ryan from the Dad Show. Before we get into today's episode, I'd like to take a minute to thank our sponsor. Have you been looking for a way to get on the water for some family fun? If so, please go visit my friends at Blue Springs Boat Company located in Kingston, Tennessee. Family owned and operated since 1988, Blue Springs Boat Company is the largest authorized Bennington and Regal dealership serving the East Tennessee area. They offer new and used boats, have a full parts department, and a certified service department on hand to help you with all your boating needs. They're proud to be your family's boat dealer. Let Blue Springs Boat Company help you find the right boat for you and your family. Visit them online at www.bluespringsboats.com or call 865-376-1472. Now, let's get to the podcast.
Welcome to the Dad Show podcast, a show all about impacting, empowering, inspiring, and uplifting information to become a better dad, husband, man, and mentor. And now, your host, Ryan Ladd.
Welcome back to the Dad Show, everybody. I want to thank you for taking the time to watch and listen and being here. I want to introduce my guest today, Mr. Frog. Before we get into a formal introduction, I'd like to ask that you would follow the Dad Show on all social media at the Dad Show Podcast, as well as on our website at thedadshowpodcast.com. Like I said, we've got Mr. Frog in the studio today, and I want to thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Frog has been a big inspiration to my life, and one of those kind of background mentors. He's changed his life quite a bit, and people do change. And you're two examples here that are still fighting the battles.
Amen on that.
Every single day to change, and society and culture tells you no, you can't change. You're not going to change. You're always going to revert back to your old ways, and we're just trying to make it every day to do what we can. But Frog, back in my DJing business, Frog worked part-time with me there, and would go out with me and see those battles and see those temptations firsthand. And
yes, firsthand.
But I'm gonna open up the floor and let Frog introduce himself to you formally and tell him a little bit about himself. And Frog, I just want to thank you for being here today, buddy.
I appreciate you. For those of you that do know me, my real name is Jeremiah, but 99% of the people only call me Frog. I'm 39 years old, single father of two amazing kids, a 14-year-old daughter and soon to be 12-year-old son. I've been raising them for the most part by myself for almost 8 years.
Wow.
And it has been the hardest time, but the biggest blessing I've ever experienced.
That's awesome. It came up in the last podcast, about fatherless homes, and then, being either a single father or a single mother home, how tough, and I don't understand.
Tough ain't the word.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for my mom living a mile from me, I don't know how I would have made it. She helped me through so much of the time because, when things first start out and even the divorce talk, you need someone to help with the kids, because if you try to get alone time with your spouse to try to just talk and you got kids in the background, so that support staff of my mom was one of the main reasons I made it this far. And definitely want to thank Mom for being there for me on that, and also showing my kids that, although there is problems sometimes in a home, that there's always love no matter what. And my mom, their Nana, will love the kids and their mom no matter what happens.
And that's got to be real tough of, like you stated, the kids being at home and you're trying to work things out with your spouse. And unfortunately, things do get heated. Sometimes it does get quote unquote ugly, and you don't at all cost want the kids to be involved or see that,
right,
that side of everything. And that's when I'm out eating or I'm out in the mall or, just out in public, period. That's probably one of my biggest pet peeves is whenever I see a husband and wife arguing and it's right there in front of the kids. And usually, kids just want your attention. They're just like, Daddy, Mommy, just pay attention to me, be with me. And then in the heat of that battle, they're, mommy, I want you, mommy, look at this. And then you're already heated with your spouse. And then that automatically just turns right on the kids, and they get the butt end of that, and it's just no good. So
one thing I've learned through the whole time is the main people who are hurt in a divorce are the kids, and especially when it comes to those disagreements and the spouses, and then the little feet run in the room, and it catches you off guard, and you might slip up and say a word, and like the kids think you just broke the entire world because you were on this pedestal and you just hurt mommy and said a bad word. Now the whole house is tore apart. And so we tried our best to get the kids out of the house when hard times came up, although it wasn't always possible.
Yeah.
And I can say I'm that guilty guy that helped destroy a home as a professing Christian, and it doesn't work. You can't be professing. You have to live it.
Yeah, exactly. And it came up in Neil and Willie's podcast. Living that testimony is a whole lot better than speaking that testimony. Like living it and showing it through action is
Yes.
rather than trying to say, hey, this, do as I say, not as I do kind of deal.
Right, definitely.
One of the things that I'm inspired and intrigued by with you, and we talked a little bit of this off camera, was how the divorce turned into this ministry, the prison ministry that you do and serve God in that way. So I'm really want to hear about this.
It's funny how God works. First off, as a Christian, God never turned his back on me. He let me make the bad choices I did. And during the problems of the marriage, I'm a softball fanatic. I love playing. So I used to play lots of church league I could pick up. I'd play 3 games a night, twice a week. And that became an issue. She finally expressed it, so I cut back. And after we had the final argument and she walked out, you talk about a void. And most people turn to a substance or something to fill that. And, being raised in a God-fearing home, that was always pounded into my head, you can't do that. You can't do that. So I really wasn't too scared about going to the substance side. But then a buddy of mine, 2.5 weeks later, said, hey, Frog, you want to go play softball? And I looked outside, it was snowing. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, up there at the Rock in Knoxville, they got a softball tournament going on. And I'm like, all right, let's go. So I'm not lying. It was snowing. So, and I haven't played tournament ball in like forever. So I showed up, and sure enough, there's like 8 teams there. And
Wow.
so I made a joke to my buddy Sean that I'm here to try out for a full-time team because I now have a lot of free time. Well, funny, the following week I got a phone call from a guy that says, you want to play full-time? I said, yeah, why? He goes, well, this guy named Jason Cottle has a team called Sports Reach, and he wants you to come try out and play with them. And so I show up and try out with Jason, and I didn't know anything about him, never met him. Come to find out he's an amazing Christian, a good friend. And so we started playing about 2 or 3 weeks in a row. He goes, I got the perfect thing for you. Like, what are you talking about? He goes, well, you love Jesus, you love softball. What would you think about playing softball in prison? And I just sat there like, what are you?
You mean like me in prison? Or
yeah. Like, my first thought was the doors clanking behind me and never getting back out. And I'm like, well, I mean, I guess if that's what God wants, I'll go do whatever. But so he introduced me to Carl Smith with Severe Heights Baptist Church in Knoxville. And they do at the time was like once a month prison ministry between Florida, Kentucky, Alabama. And my first trip was to Florida, and it was a 5-day trip. Drove down on Wednesday. So I'm nervous. We get in there, and it's like, what do I do? And they're like, play softball and talk about Jesus. So we get in there, and it was a the door clanked behind me, but I wasn't scared. It was the feeling set in that, okay, I'm in here now, but we get out in the field and I see a bunch of people in their prison attire, smooth boots on the field warming up. And it's just like, they ain't joking. We are playing I thought it was a gimmick or something.
Yeah.
And we get in there. I've never felt more comfortable in my entire life. I've never felt more at home. I would much rather play softball in prison than I would outside in tournaments. And I've told teams that. The guys I play with right now, I tell them the second prison gets called back open, I'm gone. And that was March of 2013 was my first trip.
Wow. And
up until the COVID hit, I had been to about 240 prisons total. Wow. Now, it's same prisons multiple times over and over, but I tried to calculate it. It's about 240 times. And the best part about it is I get to play something that I have a passion for. I get to share the love of God, which I have a passion for. Although I don't get paid in money to do it, I get paid in friendship and smiles. And, when I get to heaven, I'm hoping to see a bunch of them inmates come down. And if there is softball in heaven,
you're going to be playing.
You're going to be playing.
So one of the things that catches my eye there is you stated that you enjoy playing softball more with prison inmates and inside the prison system more than you do outside, and you never felt more at home. And what I think about is out in public, normal public, we have to put on this image, this front that I don't sin, I'm perfect, my life is this, but if everybody was walking around like they do in prison with jumpsuits on that say, hey, I have committed a sin, I have done something in order for me to be here, yep, you almost can take a sigh of relief like, I don't have to put up that front. I don't have to show that I am this or I am that, which you're really not. We're all sinners. Nobody's perfect.
Right, definitely.
And I can see, that.
It goes farther than the whole fact of me putting the front on is, a lot of the guys I see on the weekends, there's drugs on the field or in the cars, there's drinking, there's other people putting on front that they're fake and they don't want to talk this. And I go inside, and everybody in there knows they were in the wrong.
Yeah.
So they cannot hide that. So since they don't have to hide that, they are open. They love it. They share the gospel with us, which is amazing. If you've never been prayed over by a prisoner, it is amazing. And to see how receptive they are. Now, sometimes the warden says, hey, you're going to go out there and you're going to play. And when they talk, you're going to listen. I understand there's order in there, but I've been going so many times now. The second I walk through the gate and someone catches a glimpse of this bald head and glasses, dude, my name is yelled across the yard, and it's like a family reunion every time we show up.
That's awesome. And it's amazing that, you went through this terrible time with your wife, and something that I pray that nobody and definitely neither one of us has to go through again.
Right.
But God, you could have easily turned away and, like you said, turned to substance abuse and everything else that's terrible and, out there that's easily get your hands on and take a left-hand turn and never come back. The devil was trying to push that, I'm sure, on you, saying, oh, it's easy. You can just turn this and go. Yet you took a right turn and played softball, and then by diverting and detouring away from that terrible road, God put all the new streets, everything to that perfect destination of where you're at now.
Absolutely. And sometimes that right turn has its speed bumps or squiggly stuff in it. But I'm thankful that God has not stopped pursuing me to keep going down that path. And this year when the COVID hit and it canceled all prisons, I admit I took it wrong, because I lived for the youth group and for prison ministry, and they were both taken, and it hurt me on a spiritual and a mental level that I made bad choice. But God stayed there. It's like, this is your destination. You're either going to take the easy route or you're going to take the long, hard route. I'm going to be with you the entire time.
Yes.
But it's going to be difficult.
Exactly.
And so I'm trying to get back to that easy route. And by the grace of God, he's been blessing me the past month with more of a stability on the mindset and a peace inside. Don't know if prisons are going to open back it up anytime soon, but I know that God is good. And if he wants me back in prison,
it's where you'll be.
Where I can get back out, that's where I'll be.
Well, let's hope it's not the other way. But
right. But something I like to share with inmates is there is no difference between them and me except they got caught.
I got caught.
And I like to joke with them that I'm faster than them. I had a faster car, whatever it is. The only difference is I was never caught. And I go look back at times where I should have been caught or I did some stupid things that probably shouldn't have been alive.
Yes.
But that just tells me God's not done with me yet. There's still more ahead, and I pray I get back in the prisons soon because there's a yearning inside of me. I have friends that I call family in there. And I dearly miss them. And since they've shut down, nobody's visited them, wow. Not even their own parents. And the embrace of an inmate who has got saved under all of us in there, it's been amazing. You might see my hat here. This is my Sports Reach hat. That's another prison ministry that Jason Cottle, he did one by himself. And he would go to Little Sandy in Kentucky and bring a team and play. And then through Jason, he introduced me to Robbie Spears, who is by far one of my favorite people in the world. He found Sports Reach back in, I believe it was 1986. And Sports Reach is an international sports ministry. He takes teams to China to play basketball. He takes baseball teams to the DR. He don't take some like street team. He gets college kids. And if you follow him on his webpage, some of his Sports Reach alumni are in the NBA right now and the Major League Baseball players. I'm not that good. But what I do know is if you want to get close to God, you get close to Carl Smith and Robbie Spears because they're those two godly men right there. They have been through more than I could imagine. And to be able to call him anytime, Carl actually called me last week or 2 weeks ago, and he's like, how can I pray for you? Now, my mentality of Carl Smith is you have God, Holy Spirit, Jesus, and then Carl Smith. That is how highly I think of the man. I'm like, I want a wife. So he goes, one wife coming right up. The prayer hasn't been answered yet, but I know with that man right there, he talks to God on a daily basis, and it's a blessing to know I have men like that I can turn to.
That is awesome. That's amazing. So I want to go back to, what you said about you got down because your two main focuses is the prison ministry and the youth. And right now, both of those are shut down due to COVID. And it just hits right at home with Pastor Neil's message last Sunday about no matter what you're going through, COVID, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. God is good, and God is bigger than any of those battles, small or big. It doesn't matter.
The one part about his sermon that I remember was everything that gets to your life has to go through the filtered hand of God first. And I look at that as a divorce. My divorce had to go through God's hand before he allowed it to happen because he saw fit for it to happen. And the past, I'll say the 5 years after, I had no clue why. And the older I get, I can see a lot of selfishness involved with that. And then realizing that God has a bigger plan. And the Bible clearly says that what is meant for evil, God's meant for good. And if he allowed my divorce to happen, that just means to me he has something better in store. And the one positive I've had is I was told a long time ago that a lesson is to be learned one time. And so since my divorce, I've had 2 legitimate relationships. One lasted about 11 months and the other was about 5. And one of us were engaged at the time. But I could see God's hand saying, I don't think you've learned that lesson yet. So maybe that is why he didn't allow those relationships to continue farther. And I can sit back and say, yes, I could see myself saying, okay, God, I want this godly marriage, but let me show you how to do it.
Yeah.
And so in the relationship, both of them started out the same way, God-fearing, praying, and then you can see God here not moving and I'm steering the wheel. And I firmly believe that he doesn't want me to have to learn that lesson again the hard way.
Yeah.
But on a different note, through that divorce, I can count probably 8 women that have came to me because of home issues or emotional instability. Now, why they came to me on that one, I don't know. But I've been able to, and I hate using the word counsel. It just makes me feel, I don't know. I don't like it. But I've been able to talk to them and show them through Scripture. And I watched one lady who is a good friend of mine. She lives in West Virginia, and she went from a bad point to turning her life back over to God, to getting away from things. Forgiveness was one she was holding back. She refused to forgive some things in her past. And, I was able to use my experience to show her that God is bigger. And she went through a rough patch, but she met an amazing man. They've gotten married, and I can say I'm thankful for her friendship, but thankful that God put her in my life, because if I go through a problem and I do not share how God's got me through it with somebody else, that is selfish. That is just selfish of me. And I have no issue sharing anything in my life with anybody, none. So these women that came for help, yes, there's somebody smarter than me. Yes, there's somebody with a doctrine on the wall, but for some reason, God brought them to me, and through his grace was able to use my brokenness to help them in their life and to see how these women have moved forward in their life. I'm blessed that God was able to use me.
And so to go along with that, you just said there's a whole lot of people smarter than you. You say that you don't like to use the word counsel, and, because they could go to a quote unquote professional.
Yes.
And I feel like so much in our lives, God's saying, this is the road that I have for you. This is the path I have for you. This is your purpose. Mm-hmm. But you're like, no, God, I can't do that. And for us, as
yes,
to say, no, God, he's opened that door and you're sitting there just closing it. No, I can't do this. And, if people would, and I've never heard God's voice. I've never heard, and I know some people have said they have, but I haven't. The way that I listen to God is through thoughts in my head. If God puts that thought, I truly believe that if a thought pops into my head, for the most part, meant for good, it's from God. Yes. Now, I know the devil tries to get in your brain and divert you on that left-hand road instead of the right-hand road. But if I'm walking down the road and I see a guy walking and like take $20 out of your pocket and give to that guy. Mm-hmm. I mean, I just didn't think, oh, that guy looks like he needs $20. Right. No, God put that in my head to say, hey, that guy needs $20. Or, if you're walking down the road and a guy looks kind of gloomy or a woman looks kind of gloomy and you just smile at him and say, hey, how you doing? Or, hey, I hope you have a good day or something. That wasn't Ryan's thoughts to say that needs to happen. That was right. God putting the thoughts in my head. So that's where I'm going at is if we would listen to our thoughts, if we would listen for that voice of God to put us in those positions to say, yes, you can do this, and saying, no, I'm just not good enough. I can't do that. If God's put that thought in your head or telling you that in your head, you're good enough, and he's going to make sure.
Yes. I know the Bible talks about God speaking in a still small voice. And sitting here, it just dawned on me, I'm sure my kids would much rather me speak to them as I'm speaking to you.
Yes.
Versus me yelling at them. So I'm going to say I'm very thankful. I haven't heard God yell at me yet. Now, he slapped me a couple of times, but I don't think, like, through my ears, me hearing him yell, I think that would probably scare me to absolute death. Yeah. So I'm thankful that he does talk to us as children and normal human beings, but we do have to learn to be still and to know that he is God and to listen. And you talked about not hearing God's voice. I haven't heard God's voice, but I heard God speak. And it was the night I got saved in May 5th, 2010. I was laying there in my bed. And we'll back up to earlier that day. I was going to counseling with my older pastor for the marriage, trying to figure out how to fix stuff. And through all the stuff, Paul is his name, he goes, do you know that you know that you know that you know if you were to die right now, you'd go to heaven? And I remember my reply was, I believe yes. Yes, I am. And he said, great, whatever. We finished our session. Well, that night we had an argument, my wife and I, and she went to her friend's house, and I was sitting there in bed, and I was just crying. And all of a sudden I heard a voice say, why did you answer like that? And I'm literally just sitting there like, answer like what? And, it wasn't audible. I think it was mental, but it was almost as mental that sounded audible.
Yeah.
And it was God saying, why did you answer Brother Paul the way you did? He goes, I heard, I believe, yes, I am. And God's like, that's the most unsure statement you've ever made in your life. And I'm laying there in bed just like, because I can remember at the age of 21, I made a profession of faith. And that was because I was going through a hard time, and it was an emotional response to a situation in life. And at that moment, about 11:30 or so, I'm laying in bed, and I just started crying like, God, you're right. I've never truly accepted you. And at that moment that night, I asked Christ if he would cleanse me of my sins and to be Lord of my life. And I can still hear, even right now I'm saying that, I can still hear God saying, why did you respond to me like that? And, he's probably saying that often to me over the past 8 months when COVID hit, and I haven't been listening. But I'll promise you this, that from this point forward, I'm going to be listening for that still small voice.
I need to be talked to like a child because I don't listen in these bigger terms and my vocabulary is small. And so I need it to be put in the simplest terms, and God to be like, this is where you move. This is what you need to do. And so one of the main things that intrigued me and wanted you on the show, because the ministry that you're involved with by going to the prisons goes back to the main premise of this podcast. Yes, it's all about being a dad, it's all about being a husband, and it's all about being a godly man. And one of those things is broken homes and fatherless homes. And so Tony Evans, who, he's awesome. If you don't have the Kingdom Man book or listen to Tony Evans, please go get it because it will change your life for sure. As a matter of fact, a little side note, right before Kennedy was diagnosed, we had a men's group at the church, and I'd never been to a men's group, men's Bible study, or however you want to say it. And we were studying Tony Evans' Kingdom Man book. And so God was using Tony Evans and his book and this men's group to build me up, to make me stronger for this storm that was about to come. So I highly, highly recommend Tony Evans. So let me pull my phone back up here. So one of the quotes in his book is 70% of all prisoners grew up fatherless. 80% of all rapists grow up without a father. 71% of high school dropouts didn't have a father in the home. 63% of teenage suicides are fatherless. 40% of children in the U.S. are born into single mother homes. So being a man that's been there, that's lived it, that's seen the side that probably 95-ish% of America has not seen, do you feel those statements are pretty true?
I'd say they might be on the lower side now, but I say they're accurate. When I first got into the prison ministry, I'm the type of guy that I don't do research unless it's essential. When it comes to a softball bat, I will research, I will study, and I will buy it. Same thing with car parts. So being a part of the ministry, I was curious. And I don't know where I got the numbers from, but when I first started researching it, it said something like 90% of all the guys in there wouldn't be there if their dad was present or not abusive. And I heard them stats, and then I started researching the divorce. Like, how do you raise kids by yourself? And I saw numbers that, I want to make something clear first. I'm not knocking anybody's exes, anybody's decisions. You know, everybody makes their choices in life, and I pray that I'm not sounding judgmental towards anybody.
Yes, yeah.
80% of kids raised by a single dad go off to be college graduates and more successful in life. 80% of kids who are raised by a single mother have that more loving emotional side, but are dropouts in high school, don't make it to college, have deadbeat jobs. And, you know, when I did the research for divorce and prison, you know, I could see how they coincide together, because the Bible talks a lot about a man's responsibility as a husband and a dad and in church. So I get thrown this plate of being able to raise my kids pretty much solo, and then going to prison and seeing these kids who don't have fathers. And when you get in there, some of those guys treat you as their father. I mean, they look up to you, they respect you. They look at you and say, how much it costs for you to come down here? So, well, this trip to Florida for 9-day trips are, you know, about $450. He goes, why? Like, why what? Why would you come down into here? Well, it's simple. Said, I love Jesus. Jesus loves you. I love you. I want to be here with you. And when we tell them there's no place we would rather be, like, I'm speaking for everybody on Severe Heights and Sports Reach and the Grove Ministry, there is no place we would rather be at that time than in the prison with them. And the faces they give us of, you know, sheer appreciation. Now, there's no crying in prison. And I proved them wrong on that one. I'll give you a story here in a minute on that. But I have never felt more loved as an individual, outside my parents, of course,
yes,
and close family, than being in prison. And there's a time, I don't know, it's probably 2 years into the prison ministry, where I was going through something rough. I felt like, you know, either God had abandoned me or I'm not listening. I felt like the prison ministry was I didn't know why I was even doing it. Man, it was bad. And so that day we're at Okeechobee Institution in Florida, and one of my most favorite places to play. And one of the guys, like, I guess he saw me like burden, and he goes, "Frog, you're not Frog right now, because the Frog we know hits the ball far and, you know, runs like crazy, and he's always talking trash." And he goes, "You're just too quiet. You're not Frog." I'm like, man, this was
somebody on your team?
No, that was a prisoner.
Okay.
That's how many times I've been there. I think I've been to Okeechobee like 9 or 10 times. And so they knew me that well. And I said, man, I'm struggling. And I was like, I don't know. He goes, well, cheer up. God's got you. So the second half of the day, we play some more ball, and coming towards the end of the day, we get together, say a prayer, and we're about to leave. And one of these guys come up to me, I believe his name was Machine as a nickname. Awesome dude. And he goes, before we go, before we go, we got something for you guys. I need Craig, Brandon, and Frog to step forward. So I step forward, and I won't cry. I'll go let you know. He hands us a card. Hands Craig a card, Brandon a card, and myself a card. And he goes, these cards are to show you how much we appreciate you giving up everything and coming into the prison to share your day with us. All these signatures are a token of our appreciation. And dude, I lost it. Like, I lost it bad because that was like almost like God slapping me in a way, like, you ungrateful, but this is what you're doing.
Yeah.
So we walk over to about leave, and this dude comes up to me. He might be like 5'10", but he's swole. And he goes, Frog, men don't cry in here. I said, I am. He goes, I know, we are too. And he goes, man, I just appreciate what you guys do, what y'all give up to come down here and spend a day with us. Because for the next 4 months, this is all we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
So there is crying in prison because I will happily do it again. But God showed me that although I didn't want to be there, I didn't want to have any part of anything at that time, that I was going through a dark time, I was still obedient to go. And then God showed me firsthand why I was there.
Yeah.
And it just blew my mind.
So I gotta ask the question, because I know the devil was fighting really hard to keep you from going on that trip, because God knew what that result was going to be already before you ever left Tennessee.
Yep.
How hard was the devil fighting to keep you from going on that trip?
If I'm correct, that trip I was $180 short of going. And they were leaving on Friday. And my friend Christy from West Virginia, I just mentioned earlier, she messaged me or she called me, I forgot. But she's like, I was going to get you money earlier this week, and I just didn't have to do it, so I just PayPal'd you $180.
Wow. Golly, that brings chills up there.
I'm like, oh, I love her to death. And I was just like, you have no clue. That's the exact number I needed. So although I didn't want to go, that right there said you're going. So with hesitation, I went. And I knew we're going to Kissimmee, Florida. I mean, it's beautiful weather. We got a heated pool and a jacuzzi. And, you know, once we got prisons, we got free time to go play putt, whatever. It was like a vacation.
Yeah.
With all the guys that I love and just admire. So that dollar sign being on the exact penny of what I needed was saying, you're going.
Wow.
Whether you like it or not. And then God showed up and showed out.
That is awesome. Man, that's awesome. And I was wondering about, you know, the fatherless homes. And like I said, it's the main premise of the Dad Show podcast. Yet all the other stuff with dad, husband, man is good. But as you see firsthand, there's tons of people out there that turn to evil because of a male figure have never told them, I love you, I'm proud of you, I care about you. And yeah, I'm thank you for sharing that information, because
Absolutely.
I've heard it and, you know, knew that it was true because I've been in the fire service and going to these terrible calls, seen a bunch of what fatherless homes does, but never have I seen it from your angle that you've been able to see from inside the prison system. So going back to your daughter and to your son, what is some of the biggest hurdles, except for trying to find, luckily your mother stepped in and taken care of that role, but what is some of the biggest hurdles that you've seen and you've faced from being a single father home?
Ooh. Well, first off, we'll start with the daughter. A daughter, she is daddy's little girl, but she also needs that motherly touch. Mm-hmm. And one of my friends a while back told me you could tell she was been raised by boys because she acts like me and my son. Like, whatever it is, she does the exact same thing. And it's funny, but now she's at the age where, you know, the prissiness is starting to come in, and she's beautiful as it is, but she thinks she needs makeup. And, you know, her mom's about an hour away, so it's not like, she could call her and FaceTime her, but it's not like somebody's in the house. Mm-hmm. So trying to show her that.
And it takes a lot of courage to make that phone call or that FaceTime call rather than just walking in the living room or
Yes.
bedroom and saying, Mom, I need your help.
Yes,
I need this.
Yes. But, you know, my mom she sells some makeup products, and so she helps Lexi with her makeup ideas, but basically she's free spirited when it comes to it, and she's the most beautiful tomboy I've ever met, and not having the woman refinement, I guess, that a girl needs to look up towards. Now she's fell in love with cooking, and I'm tickled to death, and it's progressing more than sweets. So she's doing a lot on her own, but I can't get. This is why a marriage works, is a husband and a wife, a man and a woman. They each have different attributes in life. They're good in different areas. Okay, even biblically, a guy's not supposed to know the details of how to raise a daughter because they were raised as a son. So this is where the woman's side comes into play. And it was always been a struggle. It's been a huge prayer of mine that, God, I don't know this aspect of raising a female. God, if I had a woman, it'd be a lot easier. But then I hear God say, but I'm bigger.
Yeah.
Or I got you. And so the whole lack of a adult female in the house has been harder for me raising Lexi. And as for Isaac, he's a mama's boy all over, but he is the easiest kid to raise as of right now. Thank you, Lord. I know teenage years are around the corner, but I could feed the kid honeycombs and pizza, and he would eat for the rest of his life. You could tell at times he's an empath. He knows when I'm hurting, and he knows when, even to this day, when their mom and I have a discussion, and it's easier now to keep it outside the car or away from the kids so they don't hear it. But I wear some of those emotions into the car, and I try my best to have a good co-parenting relationship. And I tell them that, and I fail at times. I mean, I am guilty. Sometimes, I'm sure she wants to snap my neck. Okay. Because sometimes I'm hard-headed, and
sometimes
maybe more often than not, but still, Isaac will see it, and he feels the emotion, and you could tell it hurts him. But when I sit there, I'm able to explain to him why I'm feeling what I'm feeling, that no matter what happens between his mom and myself, that nothing's going to change between me and him. And the daily mom for him, of his actual mom, I could see a huge need, because you've always heard the thing, mama's boy, daddy's girl.
Yeah.
Well, I literally have the model for that right now. Outside that, Isaac can't physically see his mom every day. And that hard part is, I could give him love and instruction, but sometimes he just needs his mama's hug.
Yeah.
And I can't provide that, of course.
Exactly.
But as I'm trying my best to show them, is that the voids we have can be only filled by God's grace. And maybe you just need to hug God sometimes. And I did make a joke with him a while back about, demons in the house. And like, if you're ever scared at nighttime, because he likes to sleep with the light off now and door closed. And I'm like, if you ever get scared, all you got to do is say the word Jesus. I'm like, they can't stand that name. So I went into his room one morning to wake him up for school, and he said something. I'm like, well, there's a demon here. He goes, Jesus. I just started laughing because it was a joke, but he heard me. He listened, and he believed what I said. And I believe he believes what he said as well. But it's the hardships we've had as a family. I would like to say I wish different, but then again, if I wished it different, I would have lost every memory or struggle now that has brought us to where we are at. Now, I am clearly anti-divorce. I am against it at all costs. people say, how can you be anti-divorce and you're divorced? Well, it's very simple. A marriage is God-led between two God-fearing people. That's how the Bible puts it, not one Christian, one non-Christian. Now, when I got married, I was a professing Christian, but I was not a Christian. Nothing in my life showed me a Christian.
Yeah.
So I believe there is, and this is my personal feeling, is all the research I've done. I believe there is zero excuses or reasons for a divorce. And the Bible does talk about, adultery or abandonment. God is bigger. I don't care what it is. I don't care. I hate admitting some of my past guilt, but I'll let you know that I was never a perfect husband. I did cheat on my wife back before my daughter was born. And that was probably the start of the divorce problems. Mm-hmm. But even in your marriage now, if you're both Christians and believe God can fix anything, I don't care what the problem is.
Yeah.
I don't care. God can fix it. If you cheated, that doesn't mean he's going to snap his fingers. That means there's a lot of work ahead.
Yes.
But without a shadow of a doubt, if you believe God and the spouse believes God and you both focus on God and pursue God, there is not a damage done that can't be fixed. There is not an ailment that God can't cure. It's all God. And the second the words even jokingly come out, a divorce, that is, I see God's power being taken away. So when I have seen people and I've told people and they despise my point of view, that they said, well, he did such and such thing. I cannot go back.
Yeah.
You know what that just did? You just said God's power is not big enough to fix that problem.
Yeah.
You just told me you are bigger than God. Therefore, you're going to break your divorce. Or break up the marriage, sorry. And it breaks my heart. I had friends recently tell me they're getting divorced, and it literally shatters my heart because, one, this is going to sound weird, but I would give anything to have a marriage fight. People don't understand that. People in a marriage don't want to fight. But there are some people outside who would like to be married again that even if it came with a weekly fight, which could be healthy, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But when you limit God's power to he did this or she did that, so I am not going back, you have set it up for 100% disaster.
Yes.
But God is still bigger, and if those words did come out of your mouth, he can still fix it. All you got to do is turn to him fully, not a 360 turn, a 180 turn, and say, I messed up. Here I am.
And that's where I was with whenever I was drinking. And I think I've stated it a couple of times in other podcasts that I feel like Kennedy's disease was to help me get on a straighter line. And, where I'm going with this, with you talking about, you can change or, on that fact was whenever I would drink is whenever I would flirt with other women and do stuff that I shouldn't do. Do I look down on drinking if you're sitting there drinking a beer? No, I'm not going to look down on you for drinking. I have no problem with that. I have no problem with whatever you choose to do, and the way that you do it is fine with me. Just whatever Ryan was doing it, the way Ryan was whenever he drank. And it's not a godly man. It was not a married man, and not the path that I should be on. So like you said, God is bigger than that. Mm-hmm. He can handle that problem, but you have to put him first and foremost. It's not Ryan, Allie, and then God. No, it's God, Ryan, and Allie. And by doing that and by putting your marriage with God first at the forefront of it and asking him to lead you, like you said, there's nothing that you can't overcome.
Along that same line, I'll tell you a quick way to destroy your marriage after God starts the healing process. And I saw a time when my wife and I were fixing things, and it was a slow process. And I saw it getting pretty good. You know what I did? Stop praying.
Wow.
Yeah. And I remember to this day, I remember the some of the arguments, and there was no more God in that. God fixed my marriage. God, please, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Well, he starts to heal it. I got this, God. Okay.
Here you go.
Show me you got it.
Yeah.
And then, we all know, that nasty D word, divorce, follows soon after that.
And that's the thing with everything, not just divorce.
Oh,
if,
yeah.
A sick child or a loss of a job or, anything, we're like, God, I need you. Fix this. But then he fixes it. And like you said, come away. Now another storm hits. God, I need you. Fix this. And you only call on him when you need him. And that's not what you do. You call on him every single day.
Yes.
If you don't need him, you thank him for helping you.
Yes.
And continue thank you for blessings.
There's a saying I've told the youth probably 2 years back, and it's on a couple songs. It says, stay ready so you don't have to get ready. It's easier to have a consistent prayer life, and then the storm hits. You already have that habit, let's say, of praying every day. It's not like you had no life whatsoever, and then you lose your house and job in the same day. God, I need you now.
Yeah.
But if you stay ready, God, I don't know what's coming down the road, but I trust you. God, I don't know what's happening tomorrow, but I trust you. God, I don't know about this divorce, but I trust you. So when that storm does hit, okay, God, I'm here now. I still don't understand it, but I trust you.
Yes.
You stay ready. You don't have to get ready.
And that's where I was with Kennedy's diagnosis. It's obviously, and Lincoln come a little bit later with his too, but it's obviously the worst thing that I've ever been through in my life was her diagnosis. And it hit me one day. I'll tell the story again. I know I've told it, but there was a guy that became a maintenance supervisor at work in our fire department, and me and him kind of grew close and was talking every day. And he's a very godly man. And Kennedy's diagnosis hit, and he said, Ryan, just want you to know, there's going to come a day when you're not going to be able to pray. You're going to be weeping and crying so hard that you're not going to be able to think a prayer. You're not going to be able to say a prayer. You're not going to be able to do anything. But just know that God understands your tears. Mm-hmm. And I told him, I said, man, you're crazy. No matter how hard I'm crying, I can always think a prayer in the back of my head. Even if I can't say it, if I can't get the words out, I can always just have it back here. And it hit me one day. And I couldn't think. All I could do was hit my knees and throw my hands up to God. And he reached down and just pulled it right off of me. And I was I was crying so hard, I couldn't think. But I threw my hands up, and God pulled that rod off of me in a split second, dude. I was able to stand back up, regain my composure. It was able to go on with what I was doing.
That's awesome. Total surrender.
Yes, and that's what you have to do. You have to trust in God that no matter what comes, he's going to take care of it.
Yes.
But you have to have full trust. You have to have full faith and let him lead your life in the direction, not, okay, God, you handled that. I'm going to go handle the rest of it. I'll call on you when I need you again.
Yep.
And there's one thing that you said earlier that hit me really big too, is what you were telling your son about. And I'm sorry if you hear footsteps and trucks going across the floor. My kids are upstairs having a good time. So if that's in the background and bother you, I'm sorry. But what you told your son, that, if he gets scared in the dark by himself, just say Jesus. There is true power in the name of Jesus.
Oh, yeah.
I can remember Lincoln and Kennedy both going through their transplant, laying there in that little hospital crib, lines hooked up to them everywhere, and them not even feeling like looking up, not even opening their eyes. And all I could do was sit there and look at them. And I couldn't say, I was so hurt and broken, but I could look at them, and all I can remember saying was, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. And there's power in the name of Jesus.
100%. 100%. That song just went through my head as you said that. There's power in the name of Jesus.
Yes. So you went through tough times and turned your life back over to Jesus and dedicated your life to God, and you see him now as your dad, as your father, your ultimate father. What is some of the things in your Christian walk with God being your father that you try to bring into your own life and be a godly father type home, if that makes sense?
It does. It does. The first thing comes to mind is discipline. What type of father is God if he didn't discipline his kids? He doesn't beat us. He teaches us lessons, and sometimes it does hurt, but it's by our own choice. And I remember Elvis speaking this morning in Sunday school, and I could just sit there and think of the discipline, because I was mad at my daughter for something pertaining to school, and I felt God's saying something about discipline and grace at the same time. Now, some of us who grew up, we experienced the discipline aspect quite frequently. I think I lived in the principal's office and across the bed in my parents' bedroom with the belt strapped across me more often than not. But to experience the grace God's shown me over this past 8 months, especially because I didn't do what I should have did. I turned from, I hate to admit this, but for about 6 months, I didn't read the Bible or pray. And that's like, I hate saying that, but it's truth. And to now where I'm forcing myself into the presence of God through prayer, and knowing that my daughter has done something that with schoolwork that should not have happened. And I heard God say this morning in Sunday school to me that don't tell her she has to fix it. Tell her, me, that I'm going to sit there with her and we are going to fix it together.
Yes.
I don't know how it's going to happen. He said, but you and your daughter have to fix this thing. So when things don't go my way, I get a little bit of a temper. But by the grace of God today, I was able to swallow that pride, that temper. And yes, some things got a little hot for a second there, but my daughter understood she messed up. And I think she understands that my discipline for her could have been 1,000,000 times worse. And that I didn't raise my voice often. There was one part that made no sense to me, so I got a little frustrated, but I'm hoping she saw grace. The same grace God's gave me through my discipline times. I want to show my kids that you're going to mess up. That, I'm not going to say it's okay to mess up, but acknowledge the fact that you're going to.
Yeah.
And if you do mess up, or if and when you do, that ask for forgiveness. You stop making that mistake. But I want them to recognize God's grace, because the Bible clearly states one simple sin is all it takes to condemn us to hell. And by that matter, I'd be in hell time and time and time again. And I just pray Lexi saw today that I'm not perfect as a dad, but I'm trying to understand. She's a freshman. The whole teenage years, it's frustrating. And I'm not much of a book learned person. I could do anything. I don't like studying though. But God said, together you're going to fix this. So I'm hoping they understand that as a father, discipline is not something we like. It's a necessity. Not because it brings us any pleasure whatsoever. It don't. But that it has to happen. We all have choices. We have consequences per choices. And I even tell them often that God kicked me in the butt the other day or slapped me upside the head. And that I'm not above discipline. Even at work, Matt might get on me because I didn't do something the correct way. I got to take it like a man and, move on and stop doing it. And while I was talking with my daughter, my son was sitting on the couch behind it, and he had one headphone on, one headphone off, and so he could hear the conversation. And I knew that. So I wanted him to hear that, yes, I was upset. Yes, Lexi's actions were not acceptable, but I'm willing to get down in the dirt with them and help them improve their grades, to get their schoolwork done, whatever it is that, I'm as guilty as they are. I could have asserted myself when I walk in every night as I was like, how was your day? How was school? You got any problems? The simple, it was a good day. I had no problems. That sounds off good and dandy, but as a dad, I challenge you to dig deeper. Yes. Ask him a question like, so what didn't you like about the day? Or what friends made you mad? Or even say, hey, I see on the parent view form that you have 13 missed assignments. Can you please explain to me why you have so many missed assignments? So that was what the guy was telling me today, is stop generically asking a question. Be more present. My dad asked me after him and my mom split, I don't know, about 12 years ago. I don't know what it is. He goes, what did I do wrong as a dad? I said, you didn't do nothing wrong. He goes, I did something. What did I do? And the only thing I ever told him is, I wish you were more present. Mechanic, great God-fearer. Anytime the doors were open, we were in church. Anytime I had a basketball game, they tried their best to be there. We didn't have much money. I drove a 66 Plymouth Fury 3 to schools, and it sucked the life out of gas. But I always had gas.
Yeah.
He was always working to make this stuff happen. So I remember him asking me that question every day. What could I have done better as a dad? And I think for all dads, that could probably be besides showing Christ, the number one answer is to be more present. That doesn't mean you have to support every idea they ever come up with or make every basketball game. But that means to be the main factor in their life that directs them towards Christ, that holds them accountable to a higher standard. That means to try to live the model of a future man they're going to marry, or as for the son's aspect, to be that model for him to live his life after, to find him a woman.
Yes.
Be present in all aspects.
And that's, I hear you say that, your dad, you didn't have much money, and that your dad was working to provide for you and your family. And, I feel as a father, it goes along with being more present. I feel like us dads, we do spend a lot of time trying to provide for the family and use that not as a cop-out, as an excuse, but, hey, I've got to go. I'm trying to provide for us. And maybe instead of trying to provide more and make more money and do everything, maybe we need to back up and be like, this is good enough.
Yeah.
I need to be more present with you. And that doesn't mean, like you said, that doesn't mean buying cars. That doesn't mean buying jewelry. That doesn't mean buying materialistic things. That doesn't mean you've got to take me to this special restaurant. That doesn't mean you've got to take me to this special amusement park. That doesn't mean, no, that means spend time with me, be there. And it goes right along with what you're talking about in Sunday school, that you felt God leading you to be there with your daughter to help her through this problem. And what more, there's so much power in that, because God doesn't just give us a problem and say, handle it.
Right.
God is with us through that whole problem 100%. Yes, he's not physically, well, technically speaking, he is physically beside you, right, but you don't see him right here holding on to you, next to you. But if you look to him and you ask for help through that problem, I promise you'll feel his presence.
Absolutely. He'll give you that guidance.
Yes. So one of the things I want to go back to is how hard the devil will try to wedge in and turn you to evil when you're trying to do good, and are you trying to walk a straighter line? Because when Kennedy was diagnosed, I was so broken, but I'd just been not just been, but I'd still kind of doing sinful things. And when I say sinful things, was drinking.
Yeah.
I don't see drinking as a sin myself.
Right.
It's what Ryan did whenever he drank. And so whenever Kennedy was diagnosed and we got her diagnosis and knew what we was about to have to face, I turned to God and I said, I know this is one thing I do that I sin at every single time I do it. And I know you do not make deals. So I'm not going to say, if you heal Kennedy, I'm not going to do this. Or I told him, I said, regardless of whether you heal Kennedy here on earth or you heal her in heaven, I'm never going to touch another drop of alcohol because this is one thing that I constantly sin at. And I knew I did. And so the devil obviously heard me say that and obviously seen me living this, because I would go to family gatherings, and at family gatherings there would be a lot of alcohol. It's just what our family did. And I can remember somebody really close to me who I look up to so much in my family, and I'm not going to name the person, but they said, you've got something that's making you not drink right now. We'll see what happens when this is all over. And it hurt me so bad because, like I said, this person was really close to me. It was somebody that I looked up to, but I knew that it wasn't that person saying it to me. It wasn't coming from that person. It was coming from the devil through that person. So that is how hard the devil will try to drive a wedge into you becoming closer to God and living your life for God.
That just brought back a story, or not really a story, a true event that we experienced in Alabama. We woke up one morning to go to prison, and it was raining cats and dogs. And when it rains, they don't let the inmates come out. So we're discussing, like, what should we do? And like, a lot of us felt depressed or down because our trip is ruined.
Yeah.
And we're like, we're going to go over anyway. And if they let us in, we'll sit in the gym and talk to whatever. We just want to fellowship. So it's raining. And as we pull into the parking lot, the rain slows down to almost gone away. We're like, all right. So the men I'm with, when they pray, I don't care what's above you, it's blasting through that roof. It's going right to heaven, right to the throne room. And so we get out of the truck in the vans, and we're looking back over the prison, and you see the storm seriously split. Wow. And one of the guys has a picture of the storm going around. And then it comes back together behind us, and it keeps going away. We went in, and we still played softball. We did it from the outfield, then it's grass, but so much fun, so much enjoyment to see how Satan is trying to stop us from going in. And then God's like, maybe he put his finger over the prison and there's a storm, whatever it was, but Satan was not big enough or strong enough to stop us from getting in there, because God had a plan for us being in there. And many of times we do on these trips, we see he's always attacking. I mean, it's prominent, it's prevalent. 75% of the places, it seems like anti-God. Like, there's one guy we were about to do our share time. So what we do, let me give you a rundown how the inside the walls work. We get to the field, and they will open up the yard for the inmates. So you got basketball courts, you got soccer going on, you got a walking track, you got, the most I've seen at one time was about 900 people on the yard at one time. Wow. Pretty big yard. That was I forgot the prison. Anyway, so you have all these people out there. So we're coming out, and so we're going to the field. Now, I want you to just take a picture. You have mass murderers in here. You got killers. You got robbers. And what are we carrying in with us?
Baseball bats.
Softball bats. And people are like, are you not scared? I'm like, I'm more scared of the guys I come in with than anybody in here. But people can't, they're murderers. but they're human. And anyways. So we're at this one place, and we played a couple innings, and the crowd starts getting big. So we'll stop the game and then have a guy come over to the sideline, gather all the inmates we can, and share the gospel as much as we can. And then some of us will go around and try to push people, usher them over to the gathering. And this one guy goes, nah, I'm good. I'm like, why? His daddy goes, I serve heaven upside down. And I still don't understand the saying, but I'm like, so what are you trying to tell me? He goes, I believe in God. I said, okay. He goes, but I'm the guy that drives the bus. I'm the guy that usher you to hell. Whoever doesn't go to heaven, I'm the bus driver bringing you to hell. And it's just like, so you're openly telling me you're going to hell. He goes, yes, and I'm okay with it. And I was like, you even got to try to talk to me. I'm not changing it. So I was trying to get some more people and got him over there. And I turned around, and the guy was gone. And I've never seen him, like, maybe he refuses to come back out. I don't know. But knowing that Satan lives inside these prisons, you have people that are in isolation. You have people who are mass murderers, that have a mental disorder, that can't function properly. Satan likes to destroy everything. So there's one prison, the same prison. We're in Miami. We had 3 prisons scheduled. So day 1 is where I met that dude. So we leave the prison, get to the van, and we have a text message saying the other prison closed down because there was a stabbing on the prison yard. So we're like, man, what do we do tomorrow? And when the guy says, why don't you go back and talk to the person and see if we can't come back in here tomorrow? Okay. Well, what you guys don't understand is to get into a prison, it takes like 2 months. Okay. They got to process your names. They got to run your IDs. So me and Don Hughes were like, you know what? Let's go find her. We went back up there. She was the assistant warden, and she had come outside so we could talk, and we told her what was going on. She pulls the phone out to call the warden and says, hey, this is the deal. This is what's happening. Can they come in tomorrow? And if I heard correctly, he asked her what she thought. And she's like, I'm good with it. So literally at the snap of a finger, although our prison got shut down, the doors open back on the same prison. So we went back into that same prison the following day and talk about an amazing, amazing time with the guys. And so happened the third day, the other prison canceled. We were in the same prison 3 days in a row.
Wow.
And that is literally unheard of.
Yeah.
But it was the best 3 days we could possibly even imagine, because one of our struggles is discipleship. We're not called to disciple, we're called to share the gospel, because we come, share, and then we leave. So we had the opportunity for 3 days to latch on to some of those who are thirsty and hungry, and show more of the gospel. And some people are about how many people we can save, which we can't save any, but how many people we can lead to the Lord.
Yes.
Robbie gave me a challenge. He goes, how many people can you share the gospel to? He called it Operation 25,000, which changes your aspect totally. Yeah. But even still, we give those men a chance to come to Christ, and through everything we talk about, and then write their name on it. We keep a track of the name so we could pray for them. And I think my 3rd or 4th year in, just through Severe Heights Baptist, we had like 260 or 360 names on paper that professed salvation and wanted prayer.
Wow. So
that was the fruits of the ministry that a divorced single dad who never thought he'd be in prison ever gets to go and be a part of. So it doesn't matter how broken my home was. My kids They use it as a joke now. My dad goes to prison. And I love it. I love it. Your dad does what? He goes to prison. And they leave it at that. I tell them to. Because it gets them people intrigued. And then they tell him, yeah, he goes into prison to share the gospel of Christ.
Yes.
And it's led to so many conversations. So what are you doing this weekend? Well, Friday I'm supposed to be in prison about 9:00. And they just like look at me like I'm an idiot. No, I get back out too, but and I get to share the gospel with them, and it's
exactly.
it rolls downhill.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's God starting that conversation for
Absolutely.
those people too, not just the prisoners that you're going to see, but those. Something you said earlier that I just came back to. COVID shut down. Families can't even get into these guys and women too. But you know, I mean, they're like, let's just say you just visited early March, late March, everything shut down.
Yep.
These guys just profess their faith and are looking more hungry for godly things and godly literature, you know, godly men. I didn't even think about that till you stated it, that, you know, not only can other godly men go in and see them, but their own family can't even. So even if these guys are hungry and they're like, I need to get my family, you know, to know God and to profess their faith. I'm having trouble saying that. Profess their faith as well. They can't even do that. And it's hard.
There's a new way of communication through the institutions, and I haven't got on board with it yet, and I guess I'm slacking, but there's it's funny, I'm going to call it electronic email, but it's through a company where there's two of them. One, you pay the postage, and they'll print your letter out and mail it to the inmate with every postage envelope on it so they can mail one back. And the other one is more or less direct email to them that if they're on good behavior, you know, that's how they can communicate. And we put the money in there, and it still charges the same as postage. So some of our guys actually still can communicate with them. But outside of a letter or email, or maybe phone calls, there is no outside communication. And I couldn't imagine it. Wow. Because literally one of the guys, the only person that came to visit him was like his grandma or his mother, one or two, I forgot. And it was once a month, and that's what he looked forward to. So I can't imagine how he's feeling like, one, does she have the COVID?
Yeah.
Two, who's going to talk to me?
Yeah.
And a lot of the religious aspects, there's a chapel, and we try to make friends with the chaplains as much as we can. They do what they're called to do. And they have classes sometimes. They do their best to train up these guys who want it. So when we come, they say we make their job a little easier because we've already planted the seed and they get to help it grow.
Yeah.
But there's also the opposite side of it, the religions that don't believe in God, the true God. They still have the same classes, and Mormonism and, you know, Catholics, all those things that they're still prominent. And the Muslims is probably one of the biggest groups in there, and they're down. They'll come play softball with us, but the second we start sharing the gospel,
yeah,
they gone.
Yeah.
So when these guys, I didn't even think about it till you said it. Really, we were there in February in Florida. So those who profess salvation, were we enough Christ-like to keep that seed watered and direct them towards the gospel? Was our literature correct? And have we been fervent in our prayers for them? I can't imagine becoming a Christian one day and then having these walls and chains around me where I can't reach out.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if you believe God, I can promise you one thing. You ask, you receive. You seek him, and you're going to find him. You knock, and he'll open that door.
Yes.
So although they're inside of an actual prison, we still live in a prison wall outside of prison.
Yes.
And it's just the power of the name of Jesus could still break open them walls. Now, they like to think they wish they could say Jesus and prison walls open up, but it doesn't work like that.
It's not that safe.
Yeah. It don't. Yeah. So we have a good time with them, but when it comes to our emotional prison walls, is the same thing as what they live every day. Although we have access to Christ every day and a freedom to walk, how come we don't have that yearning to learn? And there's one guy I want to talk about. His name is E. He was in Okeechobee, one of the best athletes I've ever seen. And the one thing that intrigued me about him was every time we walked in, he would quit what he was doing and sit at our feet just to listen.
Wow.
He was saved through our ministry a long time ago, and his desire to learn was, it blew my mind. I wish I had half of his desire, because he would read, he would study. He got out, I believe it was this past February, and went back to Pensacola to live with his family. But his eagerness to sit at knowledge, the feet of knowledge, he wasn't at my feet, just to let you know, he's at everybody else's.
Yeah.
But to see his love for God and to see his desire to grow, it makes me feel bad about myself, because I have freedom.
Exactly.
But what do I do with it? I live inside of a prison wall myself sometimes, and I refuse to get out because of own stupidity. And here this guy is who lives in a prison wall, and he's seeking Jesus.
Yes.
Just blows my mind.
And we're only probably 25 to 30% of their effort that,
Oh, yeah.
and it's one of those things you take it for granted when you have it, but still. And another thing that I want to touch on that you said, pretty hit home, was you don't live on your numbers of people that have been saved. You can almost relate that back to sales.
Yeah.
If you go talk to 5 people and you hit 10% of that, well, you've only maybe saved one person.
Right.
But you talk to 25,000 is what your all's goal was, and you hit 10% of that, 2,500. Like you said, don't live on your wins.
Right.
Put it out there. More numbers, the higher the numbers, the more wins you'll have.
What's our goal as even a dad or a Christian? Our goal is to portray Christ in everything we do.
Yes.
My mission field outside of prison are my 2 kids. And outside my 2 kids, it is the youth group of the church. So if I could show Christ to my kids to where they make that choice to follow Christ, that is the greatest victory outside of my salvation that I will ever experience. The same thing goes with, if I share the gospel with 25,000 people, 25,000 inmates who will never see daylight again, and let's say God saves one of them, does that change anything?
It has, yes.
It changes that one person.
Yes.
If we went for numbers and we saved that one, if my goal was to save people, I'd be fired. But my goal is to tell as many people as I could about Christ, and to 10% of 25,000 people inside of prison. Guess what that can do? That can start a fire.
Yes.
And if God allowed it, the entire state of Florida could be saved due to the inmates sharing the gospel.
Yes.
There's a story of a guy, I never met him. He was there before my time. He was high up in the Crips. Gangs are a big thing in prison, it's true. He was like the man in charge. And by the grace of God, he found Christ and chose to lead a life for Christ. But he chose not to step down as the leader of the gang. And it caught my curiosity. He goes, when I get out, I go back home, I'm going to be up there with the big dogs.
Yeah.
Then I get the opportunity to witness to them. Now, how many of us would do that? First off, the idea of a gang scares me, especially as serious as they are about it. But 2, knowing that you are in that much power that, the opposite gangs are trying to kill you, but you're choosing to go back into the fight to share the gospel,
to change other people.
Yeah. So if I didn't go to Florida, or the other team didn't go to Florida to witness to that gentleman, where would he be at to this day? Yeah. And I've been doing this, like I said, right at almost 8 years now. It'll be 8 years come March. And I know of 2 that I can personally attest to standing there with them, sharing the gospel, and watch them give their life to Christ. One kid looked at me, he goes, I'm 21. I'm like, okay, I'm 36. He goes, let me tell you my story. I was out drinking. I got trashed. Decided to go for a drive. Head-on collision with a family of 4. I got put in here for, I think he said 15, I forgot the years. And I'm like, I can't imagine. But I started sharing the gospel. He goes, God's not going to love me. I'm like, why is that? Look what I've done. I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's not the prettiest thing, but God doesn't care what you've done.
Yeah.
And I talked to him for about 15, 20 minutes, and the dude finally, God opened his eyes, and he said he finally realizes that his action doesn't define his future. Yes, he has consequences, but at that moment, he prayed to receive Christ. And this is an obedience. That was an obedience test for me. I got mad on that trip. Half the crew flies home on a Saturday. So we're at this one prison, and it is noon, and half the team's flying home. Well, we ain't got enough people to play. We also bring older people that can't play softball but love Jesus. Yeah. And they will walk out individually and share the gospel. And that they while we're playing, they're getting the stragglers. Well, they flew out. And I'm like, Mike, who's going to share the gospel? And God goes, you are. So I'm like, if y'all don't know, I'm big into softball. That is me. But God's transformed me to sharing the gospel through it. So I quit playing softball, and I decided to walk. And I believe that was a test from God of being obedience, because he was the last person I was able to talk to before they closed the yard down. Wow. And we were literally walking back towards the lines that had a lineup in, and to see the man give his life to Christ I got excited. I'm like, yes, I got one, but that was, to me, was like another one, just one more Lord. Like this right here, it says just one more Lord. Another trip where that trip I just talked about, we were there for 3 days. On that third day, told my buddy Swag, I said, Swag, there's a reason we're here. No joke. We walked to the field carrying our equipment, and I stack it up. And this guy beelines right to me, said, Frog, we need to talk. So him and I walk off to go talk. And he was the reason we were there for the third day. At that time, we weren't supposed to have been there. He heard the gospel the first day, but he was like, just pushed it off. And through the amazing grace of God, he picked me out of the crowd. I don't know why. Outside my loud mouth. It's funny, but I talk godly trash on the softball field. But he was the reason the third day that we went back, and Swag told me, he said, the second dude and I walked out to pray or talk, Swag looked over at Carl Smith and said, he's the reason. And within, I think it was like 4 minutes later, the man professed salvation, and we were able to go back 2 or 3 times, and he was the reason. And seeing how God works like that, I could sit here and talk and talk and talk. And I got another story I want to share too. Hope you don't mind.
No, go ahead.
We were at Franklin Institution in Alabama. We got to the field, and it's an open prison. Good work release, good behavior, no fences, minus the softball fence, and
The most important one, right?
the most important one, yes. And this kid named Sam was hind catching for the other team, and he was a heckler. So you know what that did to me? It upped my game. I am the best heckler in prisons, and he starts running his jaw. So I hit a home run. I crossed home plate. He goes, "You're never going to cross again." Really? So we get unlimited base runners. So anytime someone got on base, I ran for him, and I crossed home plate 9 times that first inning. I heckled him the entire time, and I believe he said something that he didn't know. He was unsure about salvation. That was like 2 hours in. And I pulled Carl and Skittles to the side. I'm like, this is why we're here. Dude, Sam is the reason we are here. And I told them why. I'm like, you guys be in prayer. While we're playing, you be in prayer. So we play the rest of the day. And him and I heckled. I mean, it's just so much fun. There's no fighting. There's no cursing. It's all fun and games. And at the end of the day, God told me to share the gospel with the group. So as I did. And, you know, some people have different versions of altar calls. Some people will instruct people how to pray, give them the prayer or the words to say. You know, I felt God was telling me that day to make them make the choice. And I stood there and said, you know, there's somebody here right now, somebody. If you want what we just talked about, if you want to know who Jesus is, I want you to step up here beside me. Walk up here. And this kid sat in the back corner.
The catcher.
Sam.
Yeah.
And it was quiet for a second. All of a sudden, you heard someone stand up really quick. And it was Sam. He's walking along the fence line. And he walks up here. And he stands beside me. And I looked at him and said, Sam, I already knew. And so Carl Smith went and counseled them, discipled. And the gentleman professed salvation at that moment. Amen. And it's to see God point someone out early that day, but then make us wait, was like cooking a pie and then having to wait to get the finished product. Because I knew without a doubt he was the reason we were there. And to see that man give his life to Christ, not but because of anything I said or did or the team did, the fact that we were obedient and the Holy Spirit was calling, it was some of the most beautiful moment I've ever experienced in prison.
There's 2 things that I hope that everybody takes away from today. If you hear nothing else, one is, no matter what, if you look to God through everything, the devil's going to show his face.
Yep.
He's going to come through storms. He's going to come through family members telling you that you can't, through your own mentality saying, I'm not a counselor. I'm not good enough. This is not what I'm meant for. But if you look to God, all those things won't matter.
Absolutely.
You'll continue on the right path.
Right there. FROG. Fully rely on God.
100%.
100%.
No matter what. So everybody, what I'm saying, no matter if you're driving to work, there's rain, there's traffic stops, you run out of gas, whatever that storm may be, it's nothing. God's meant that for a reason, and God will get you to your final destination as long as you look to Him, and let Him lead your life.
Absolutely.
And the second thing that I hope people take away from today is, I guarantee you that you never thought that you'd be sharing the gospel through a prison ministry.
Not at all.
And I never thought that I'd be sharing the gospel through a podcast, through YouTube. So I say that to say this: no matter where you're at, no matter what you're doing, you don't have to be a pastor. You don't have to be a preacher. You don't have to be the Sunday school leader. You don't even have to serve in the church. As a matter of fact, if I think about it, it's almost better. You do need to serve in your churches. Don't take this statement the wrong way, but it's almost better if you serve outside of your church rather than inside of your church by spreading the gospel, because people expect when they go to church to hear the gospel.
I can see that. Yes, definitely.
People don't expect when they go to the grocery store to hear the gospel. People don't expect when they go to work to hear about God. They don't, hit people when it's unexpected. Think about the times that it's happened to you. What catches you off guard when you're not expecting it? And that's when it usually has the most impact on it.
Simple tattoo right there. It says to tell us that. A lot of people have no clue what it means.
I don't.
Do you not?
No, I do not.
Sweet. It is finished, which is Jesus' last words on the cross. And I could be sitting in a restaurant like this or walking somewhere and someone will stop me and say, hey, what is that? Well, I'll let you know it now. If you post a tattoo on your arm or get a tattoo done, someone is going to stop you.
Yes.
So be prepared to answer the question. And as a witness, it is so simple. What does that mean? Well, let me tell you. Exactly. And that opens that dialogue of whatever. But as you said, it makes a good point. People expect to hear about Christ in church. You could have all the Christian words ready, all the, I'm going to say this because I know they're going to understand. You could try to prepare for all you want to. Someone once told me, be prepared for the unexpected. Now, how do you do that?
By knowing Christ and letting him lead your life 100%.
Without Christ there and that interaction comes up,
you're always prepared.
I was never prepared for raising 2 kids by myself. But by the grace of God, with him dragging me through this sometimes he literally had to drag me because I was so stubborn. Anything is possible, from sharing the gospel to an inmate to raising 2 kids by myself and everything in between. It is not possible without God. And if you think it is, I'm going to dare say try it, because from personal experience, you're going to be on your knees in the dirt asking for forgiveness and telling God that you can't do it. You have to give it to him. And
you may have success at first.
Oh, yeah.
You may have slight success. And you may never have to end up on your knees in the dirt. But more than likely, it's going to fail.
Absolutely.
Even if it doesn't fail, I promise you that if you look to God and you put God first in that, it's going to be a whole lot more successful.
Oh, yeah.
Rather than say it's a business venture, instead of making $20,000 profit, if you let God lead it, he will make it a lot more profitable.
Absolutely. You might not see a dollar sign. That's what I was telling somebody. As a kid, I wanted to get paid to play basketball for a living. That was my dream job. I said, now I get paid to play softball in prison, not by money,
yes,
by friendships, by souls I'm going to see in heaven one day, and by the grace of God.
Which is a lot more valuable than money, because you cannot take money with you.
That is a fact.
Yes. Well, Frog, man, I appreciate you being here today, man. It's been awesome. We could go on, bouncing stories back and forth for hours. But I want to know, man, is there anywhere that if some of the listeners want to connect deeper with you, want to learn more about the prison ministry, want to maybe even get involved with that, or maybe they just want to donate some funds to help fund that? Is there anywhere that they connect with you?
Yes, definitely. Through Facebook and through email are probably the quickest ways to get a hold of me. If you just want to send a donation to help anybody in the sports streets industry or the prison ministry, I have a PayPal account I think it's at Jeremiah Kross, or my email address will get you there as well. Any dollar helps. Sports Reach is actually supposed to go to Belize in February to do some softball and some repair work on some houses. And that trip's like $2,700. So, I'm not asking for money, but what I want to leave you with something is, if God's called you to do something, everything's provided for. Like, God called me to go to Florida that trip. I was $180 short. It was already provided. I just had to wait to the very last second to get it. So don't give up. When it comes to a mission field, if someone comes to you and says, do you want to go? And you feel led to go, don't say, I'm going to pray about it. No. Say yes, and then go pray about it.
Yes.
Because if you limit your ministry to $, you've limited God.
Amen.
As the Bible says, God owns a cattle on 1,000 hills. And when my buddy goes, who says God won't sell a cow to make your trip happen?
That's so awesome. That is. Man, thank you. Thank you for being here.
My
God
pleasure.
Bless you, brother. I appreciate it. Everybody, please go show Frog some love. And if you want to connect with him deeper, the email and PayPal, as well as his Facebook, will be in the show notes. And if you're on video, it should pop up in the screen. I'd like to ask that you would engage with us on all social media at The Dad Show Podcast, as well as visit our website at www.thedadshowpodcast.com. You can learn more about the show, learn more about me and my family. There's even some Dad Show merch on there as well. So I just want to thank you for listening and for watching and for being here. And God bless everybody. We love you and thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Dad Show Podcast. Please like, review, and subscribe.